Welcome back, everybody. I'm Chief Meteorologist Samantha Jacques here with part 2 of answering your questions about being newly announced as chief and being a meteorologist as well. We're going to answer more questions because we've had so many submissions, but if you missed the first part, you can find it on our website, on 13 Plus, and of course on YouTube as well. But let's delve into things because we have a lot more questions to answer. This one was sent in from Jeff. Jeff wants to know what causes thunder snow. He saw it for the first time ever during the last winter storm that we had. So yeah, that's a great question. It was certainly unusual. I jumped out of bed. I was so excited out from a dead sleep and ran outside when I heard the thunder snow because it is a rare occurrence. Very similar to the way that a summer thunderstorm will set up. It is caused by instability. So the contrast between warm air at the surface and colder air aloft causes that air to rise rapidly and can create a thunderstorm. Now this time around, the profile of the atmosphere was cold enough for instead of rain to come down, snow came down. But that contrast of the warmth in this case scenario actually came from Lake Michigan being so warm with the water temperatures sitting in the mid-40s, creating and causing that instability. And then when the thunderstorm cells moved over land, it was cold enough, of course, to support that snowfall. So that's why that occurred. We've seen a couple rounds of it, and I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see a couple more. Okay, our next question is from Jack, and Jack wants to know, what does it take for a shelf cloud to form? Shelf clouds are one of the most beautiful things, especially when they come in rolling off of Lake Michigan in the summer months. They just are picture perfect moments. A lot of times what entices young meteorologists in the making. But all that really is the leading edge of a thunderstorm or a cold front, and it's actually caused by strong winds at the surface. A lot of times shelf clouds can be indicators that yes, there's going to be strong thunderstorms, but it doesn't necessarily have to be severe. Sometimes it can just be heavy rainfall. But I always say if you see a shelf cloud rolling in off Lake Michigan, it's time to get off the beach right away. David wants to know why so much emphasis is put on wind chill values or feels like temperatures. Very few folks go outdoors with bare, wet skin. Okay, that's a good question. Well, one, feels like temperatures or wind chill values, your skin does not have to be wet, but it does have to be bare, right? So any exposed skin that you have, your hands, your face, your nose, if you weren't wearing shoes, for example, that would be what you would feel on your skin temperature-wise. So it's really, really important for people to understand the difference and understand what the feels like temperature is, because if you have construction workers outside for hours on end working on things and they have nothing covering their face, it matters if it's going to be sub-zero when you start to factor in that wind chill value. So to me, I actually find the wind chill value to be more important than the actual temperature, because the temperature does nothing if that's not what it actually feels like or could cause harm to you if you are outside and don't have every little inch of your skin covered up, which, let's face it, most of us don't go out covered from head to toe like we're going skiing. So we do need to be prepared with that wind chill value. Okay, our next question came from James L., and James said, please, for the love of all things weather, could you explain heating and cooling degree days? Yeah, so this doesn't necessarily directly correlate to what I do, but there are meteorologists that deal with this outside of broadcast meteorologists. But all a heating degree day or a cooling degree day is the average temperature minus a reference temperature. So the average daily temperature, for example, right now, that would be at about 36 degrees, minus your average temperature that they come up with, or a reference temperature, which typically sits at about 65 degrees. And then that lets people know how much they should heat a building. So that's really important for meteorologists that go into private sector meteorology, allowing them to know maybe they work for an energy company and they can allow them some insight into how much energy they should send to a certain region to be able to warm or cool those buildings. So not something that I do, but meteorologists do deal with that. The next question comes from Dennis, and he wants to know, in order to be or maintain chief meteorologist, are you required to obtain any further certifications or updated technologies? Congratulations, by the way. Thank you so much for the congratulations. So right now I am an AMS certified meteorologist, so that's kind of the highest degree that you can get, or highest certification, I should say, that you can earn as a meteorologist, and so I'm grateful to have knocked that out before becoming chief. That's a really hard test that you take in combination with submitting doing several on-air performances to get you that certification. But I, of course, will always be trying to keep up with the latest stuff coming from the American Meteorological Society. It's a really, really, really useful network of broadcast, private sector, and government meteorologists that all kind of come together and on a yearly basis meet for a conference and discuss all of the new happenings in meteorology. And so I make sure to always keep up to date with those things so that I'm, able to be up to date for all of you as well. Tim, when I moved to Robinson Township 30 years ago, summer storms would frequently miss us. Frequently do they pass to the north or south or develop and weaken over Grand Haven. A boundary from Holland to Grand Rapids can frequently be seen. Has this been documented? Possibly due to the shape of the coastline of Lake Michigan, Spring Lake, the Grand River, those sorts of things. Yeah, so this is really incredibly interesting, and there are a group of researchers right now, including one of my former professors, Dr. Jason Keeler, who are studying these boundary layers and the influence of a lake breeze versus a land breeze, and those are the things that actually cause the storms to travel on the same trajectory. They spent an entire month here, located in Holland, Michigan, for the entire month of July. Yeah, I think it was July this past summer, to research why that happens, what causes these boundaries to form. And so that's a part of meteorology. Yes, when you work in the market for a while, you kind of know the trajectory that those storms are going to take, but what's actually happening at a really, really fine, small scale level, there is tons of research to be done. And there's an active group of meteorologists right now from around the country that are studying that Lake Michigan boundary. And so that's an awesome question. I wish I had a better answer for you, but just know that there are a lot of brilliant minds that are working on answering it. The next question is, why can't we get more sunshine through the winter months? I guess I will have to keep up. Oh, this is sweet. I guess I will have to keep getting up to see your smiling face to make up for it. Well, that's kind. So in the winter months, right, the angle of the earth changes. So our days get shorter. We see less sunlight in general. But then we can't forget that we're located next to Lake Michigan, which not only generates lake effect snow and rain, but also lake effect cloud coverage. And so that lake effect cloud coverage leads to more gloomy days than not during the winter season. And then, of course, you factor in just the regular cloud coverage as well that we see on a daily basis. So all of those factors working together tend to leave us with very little sunshine here in West Michigan in the winters, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. Randy wants to know, why does low barometric pressure indicate stormy weather, and which type, low or high, can be associated with headaches? Okay, this is a fun question. So whenever I go to elementary schools, I teach them about high and low pressure and what the difference is. And I always make the little kindergartners stand up really straight and still for high pressure, because high pressure, the molecules in the atmosphere when we're under it are very, very still. So all the water molecules in the atmosphere are still. They're not colliding with each other, so they just kind of sit there. And when that happens, we're often underneath sunny skies or calm weather. In a low pressure system, the molecules in the atmosphere start moving all over the place. So think of a bunch of little kids that have been sitting still for way too long. They need to jump out of their seats and move around. That's what the water molecules are doing inside a low pressure system. Well, when that happens and the water is moving all over the place, they start to collide into each other. They build clouds that way. The more they collide, the more moisture that's available traveling with that low pressure system typically, the bigger that the clouds can get, the heavier the clouds get, and then eventually forming rain. If we get other ingredients present that are just right, moisture, lift, instability, wind shear, those are the things and key factors that we look for as meteorologists, they can form into a thunderstorm. So that's why that happens. When it comes to headaches, that's actually typically the change in pressure, the change from high pressure to low pressure, but of course more typically associated with the low pressure system. But I think a lot of people who deal with that might notice it more as that initial change rather than when a low pressure system is sitting right over us. Okay, next question is from Sean. How were you able to predict with such accuracy? Well, that's kind. Do you feel any additional pressure being chief now? Okay. The first question, how do you predict with such accuracy? I think we try our best. First of all, we're not always perfectly accurate, and I know some of you at home are laughing right now like, they're not always right. But I first want to thank, every professor and all the education that went into becoming a meteorologist. I truly believe that Central Michigan University has one of the best teams of professors teaching us there. I think I had a really thorough education, and that helped me a lot. Thank you, Dr. Marty Baxter, for being the best mentor and professor and teaching me all that I know. The other thing is that I grew up in Michigan, and so did our entire team of meteorologists here at 13 on Your Side. That makes a huge difference. Understanding the landscape and the influence of the Great Lakes makes a huge difference in forecasting, and there's no model that can do that right. And I think that it's that localized expertise that allows us to be just a little bit more accurate than your cell phone. All right. Do you feel any additional pressure as chief now? Of course I feel additional pressure. Chief Meteorologist George Lessons, he was a legacy, he was a legend. His forecast accuracy, he's another person I should be thanking for my forecasting skills, was so sublime, and I'm grateful to have learned under him. Huge shoes to fill, of course. And then there's the fact, too, that the industry is changing in broadcasting. There are all these social media meteorologists who maybe don't even have degrees yet. They're hobbyists, all these different things. And we're trying to balance all of that. How do we stay relevant on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube when there's a whole generation of people who no longer watch local TV, and making sure that we can keep them safe in storms and during severe weather and in lake effect snow events, while also still tailoring our forecast to a crowd of people who do still watch local TV. So we're kind of in this very interesting time. I feel fortunate to be a chief in this time, that there is so much change, but that makes it a little extra challenging as well. Okay, Cheech wants to know, why are our winters not like they used to be in the 60s? They seem to be warmer, the snow comes and goes. I've heard many odd reasons for this, so wondering the truth behind it all. That is a great question. When your grandparents say their winters used to be worse, it's because they were. Maybe they were a little dramatic and they walked uphill both ways with no shoes on to get to school, but their winters truly were worse. Each and every year, we see more above 32-degree days than the year past. We are seeing the influence of climate change at the strongest levels during the winter months. And if we see temperatures above 32 degrees, we know what happens, right? Not only do we melt the snow that's on the ground, but we also can't make as much snow. So if we consistently are seeing our temperatures now average between 34 to 36 degrees in the winter months here in West Michigan, we are going to consistently see less snowfall. And those are just plain factors of climate change. And we are seeing it play out year after year after year. And that is not something that's going to change unless we change our habits in a big way. All right, Steve, is 2025 expected to be a snowy and long winter? This is a loaded question because there's two things at play here. One, we have that neutral La Nina that we talked about in the last clip. We also have a very, very warm Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan, upon recording this in December, is at 46 degrees right now. That is the warmest that it has ever been on record for this time of year. That means that it is going to be much harder for us to freeze over Lake Michigan, or any of the Great Lakes at that. And the longer that that body of water remains open, the longer that it remains above 32 degrees, the more lake effect snow events we're going to see. So, yes, will we likely see more snowfall this season than average? Sure. Will that snowfall likely melt away between each event because our air temperature isn't cold enough to sustain it? Yes. So a little bit loaded because we're going to have these periods of 3-4 days of a foot of snow, 14 inches, 20 inches of snow. That melts away in 3 days as well. I do think, though, come January and February, looking at our large-scale patterns, that we will get a longer sustained cold snap, that polar vortex dipping down just a little bit. And if that happens, we could start to see more system snow that shoots down. And if we see that, that would stick. So there's my story. I think the back half of winter could get a little bit yucky. All right, Nancy. Recently we experienced a meso-low with lake effect snow. How common is this, and can we expect more of these lows in winter? So for those of you who are wondering, a meso-low is a really, really small low pressure system, something that models do not pick up on very well. There are meteorologists who love to study these really, really fine, detailed low pressure systems that can seemingly come out of nowhere. And Michigan's a really fun place to study that at because Lake Michigan can cause them. So a mesolow is formed from that sharp contrast in Lake Michigan to the air temperature in the same way that lake effect snow events happen. And if there's just enough instability, right, so just enough of that contrast of warm to cold air, what caused our thunder snow to form, that can also create a mesolow, which is not an easy thing to have to deal with. I remember Blake Hansen and I were pulling our hair out that day when we had to deal with both the lake effect snow and the mesolow. But yeah, with how warm Lake Michigan is right now, we could continue to see this happen. The next lake effect snow event that followed that, I remember saying to the team, we need to be prepared and watching for a mesolow to form. Okay, also we spotted a water spout near Holland State Park on October 13th. How rare are these on the big lake? And have water spouts caused damage when they reach land? Yeah, water spouts can cause damage. They are rotation in the same way that a tornado is. It's just that they're over water and not on land. Water spouts are rare, sure, but overall, it's the temperature contrast, light winds at the surface and strong winds aloft that cause it. That creates shear in the atmosphere, and shear in the atmosphere is a fancy way of saying twist in the atmosphere. When you have calm winds at the surface and they kind of change in direction as you go up and then they get stronger, that can cause a cloud or even a lake effect snow cloud to start to twist and form a funnel cloud. The next question is, I was wondering why you only periodically, instead of every day, show the wave conditions on Lake Michigan. In the summer months, we show them all of the time. We show them at least once a half hour or at least once an hour. So you can find that in our forecasts a ton in the summer months. In the winter months, we don't show it all the time because chances are there's really just not as many boaters heading out on the lake. And chances are it's pretty windy from October stretching all the way through February. So we get high waves pretty much all winter season long, which I know our surfers really enjoy. All right, Emily wants to know, what do you call a thunderstorm in winter? So a thunderstorm in winter months is the same thing in the fall, spring, summer as well. But if it comes down to snowfall instead of rain, we would call it thundersnow. Okay, Joe wants to know, how do you know where the jet stream is? That's a great question. So we analyze where the jet stream is using a multiple variety of different factors and things. Weather balloons are launched every single day. We launch 2 in the state of Michigan each day, 1 in Detroit and 1 up in Gaylord. I wish we had one here in Grand Rapids. We also use model data. We also use satellites, which are located in outer space, and look at the picture and the evolution of the clouds circulating Earth. And all of those things help us indicate where the jet stream is and how the jet stream is going to move. And the jet stream, of course, influences all low pressure systems, where they move, where they drive, and where they become strongest. So it's really important. You're supposed to, Meteorology 101, you start in the upper levels of the atmosphere at the jet stream, and then you work your way down layer by layer to the surface analysis of what's happening locally. And so the jet stream is stop number 1 when it comes to forecasting. And that's our last question for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being so curious and asking so many thoughtful, intelligent questions. If you ever have more questions, you can find me on various social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on TikTok, doing it all, trying to get you as much information as I can. So reach out there, or you can always text us at 616-559-1310.